Welcome back to another episode of the Paper Chased podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Jackson. And today, we've got an interesting story for you. Today, we're going to talk about the Chicken King. Now, this story is about a man, a New Orleans native known by the name of Al Copeland. Now, for those of you who don't know who Al Copeland was, he was the mastermind behind Popeyes Chicken and Biscuits fast food chain. You know, the one that uses catchy Southern New Orleans-themed marketing to pander so-called Cajun and Creole food to the masses. Anyway, if you've lived in America for a while, you've probably run across a Popeyes Chicken and Biscuits at least once or twice in your life. Now, regardless of any of that, by delving into Mr. Copeland's story, we can shed some sort of light on the way that justice is achieved in the nation's only civil law jurisdiction, that would be Louisiana. Now, let's rewind and take it back nearly a decade to good old 2008. It was the late 2000s. President Bush was still in office, the housing crisis was in full swing, and Al Copeland, the Chicken King, was dying of cancer. So, in order to set the stage, we'll begin with none other than Mr. Copeland on board his private jet en route to Rome to, get this, visit the Pope, as some sort of last-ditch effort to thwart a life-threatening and rare salivary gland tumor. Now, when money can't buy you health, what it can buy is a golden ticket on the spiritual expressway to try to get right with Jesus via Benedict XVI. Now, historically, religion has always provided a framework for the wayward souls amongst us to repent when we sense the end is nigh. Copeland really, he took it to the next level here. You know, it's 2008, and this guy's trying to bring back indulgences, but hey, as the cliche goes, the truth is stranger than fiction. But no, seriously, you can't make this stuff up. So if you're scratching your head right about now because of how preposterous this all sounds, just know that you're not alone. Affluence is a tricky animal, and so was Mr. Copeland. Given that the Catholic Church was no stranger to the sale of indulgences, that is, buying your way into the pearly gates of heaven, they seem to have no qualms with ushering Mr. Copeland right to the top of the religious food chain. Once Mr. Copeland's private jet landed in Italy, his bubble was burst when he discovered that Pope Benedict was actually on a retreat. How could he buy himself a miracle now that the Pope was gone? Well, everyone has a price, including the Pope's next in line, Monsignor Christopher Nolte, who stepped up to the plate in an effort to, well, help save Copeland's withering life by accompanying him to a local shrine after joining him and his family for a hearty traditional Latin Mass inside St. Peter's. It was going to take more than just a dose of reconciliation, complete with the sprinkling of Our Fathers and Hail Marys for Copeland to get it right with Jesus. But it happened, in Copeland's own delusional way nonetheless. You see, Copeland was convinced that an elderly woman he interacted with that gave him her rosary after a mass was the legendary 14-year-old Bernadette Siberius, to whom the Virgin Mary appeared. In Copeland's own mind, he was that much closer to the Blessed Mother via proxy, and thus that much closer to getting it right with Jesus. Alright, I get it. This whole scene is probably reading like a chapter in some sort of Erasing Sins for Dummies book. Because, spoiler alert, it didn't work. Spiritual work was too little too late, as they say. Al Copeland, he perished a few weeks later from Merkel cell carcinoma on Easter Sunday of all days. Unlike Jesus, his body did not rise, but his legacy, and the New Orleans courtroom canon sure did. The story of the Chicken King's ascension into the public eye is as gaudy as his tacky restaurants. Moreover, his incessant squabbles with other famous New Orleans residents are as spicy as his signature cayenne pepper chicken batter. Sprinkle his tumultuous love life on top, and we have all the fixins for one hell of a courthouse gumbo, a style that is, as they say, naturally Nolans. Tainted love always makes for a juicy subject, and Copeland's tortured love saga is no exception to this rule. His childhood sweetheart, Mary Alice LeConte, was his first wife. She passed away in 1995, long after they legally divorced. Next up in his revolving door of a love life was a woman by the name of Patty White, whom he married in 1978. And get this, they got divorced too. Surprise, surprise. Breathing new life into the expression "third time's a charm," Copeland got hitched yet again. But this time, it was an all-out spectacle of wealth and excess. This extravagant matrimony to his former receptionist, Luann Hunter, served up extra cheese with the ceremonial wine, as the two lovebirds tritely tie the knot on Valentine's Day, 1991. The ceremony not only put Copeland's love for his blushing bride on display, but also his newfound status as king of the Popeyes fried chicken empire. For this over-the-top ceremony, his bride toted a bouquet of pink heart-shaped anthuriums, while wearing a matching gown adorned with pink and white hearts with a massive 15-foot train. A cool 600 guests were in attendance at the New Orleans Museum of Art to witness the couple exchange vows under a 9-foot-tall portrait of Marie Antoinette. The would-be Sun King, Al Copeland, certainly channeling his inner King Louis, France, and his guests were pampered with a feast fit for a king. Veal, oyster patties, and crawfish beignets were served as his guests were serenaded with music by Kool and the Gang and Michael Jackson's sister, LaToya. The grand finale featured a cliché heart-shaped fireworks display that burst over the crowd, revealing a message from the bride reading, "Al, I'll love you forever, Luann." It was official. Al Copeland had successfully risen from the ashes of his former existence in the downtrodden New Orleans housing projects to stake his claim in the business big leagues. It was the American dream, neatly tied up with a gaudy golden bow, dripping in chicken grease. Who could ask for anything more? Well, apparently, his wife Luann, she could ask for more, because she filed for divorce 8 years later in 1999. Alas, his saccharine display of idealistic romanticism had devolved into a major divorce case that would drag out for several years before finally exploding into the public sector. Luann Hunter versus Al Copeland was initially shrouded in secrecy, as the judge kept the proceedings sealed, despite copious attempts by the press to obtain exclusive access to all of the dirt. There was a lot at stake in the case of Luann Hunter versus Al Copeland, namely, issues concerning financial support and child custody. September 15, 2003 marked the point of no return, after Luann accused her former son King of a selfish scheme whereby Copeland allegedly offered $750,000 in hush money to someone in exchange for not spilling the beans on a conspiracy involving Copeland bribing a judge to secure custody of his son Alex. Luann Hunter claimed that Jefferson Parish District Court Judge Ronald Bodenheimer was tapped to get a contract selling seafood to Copeland's restaurants in exchange for rigging the child custody dispute. Was it absurd for Luann to accuse Your Honor of such atrocious behavior? Probably not, considering that Judge Bodenheimer would eventually serve time after pleading guilty to drug conspiracy and mail fraud charges. But hey, nobody's perfect, right? Especially not in Louisiana's courtroom carnival. The majority of the heat surrounding the Copeland conspiracy was centered on a sworn deposition where Bodenheimer directly implicated Copeland. Add to this the now public knowledge that Copeland had a habit of conveniently reminding the judge of his unwavering loyalty and political support in the past, and we have a good old-fashioned case of Southern hospitality, also known as bribery. Bodenheimer recounted these shady dealings and remembered Copeland, quote-unquote, telling me that, We supported you because you were the kind of guy who would do the right thing. And the right thing is to keep me and Alex together. What he let me know was that if I didn't do his right thing, that yes, I would probably have a candidate run against me. Well, Copeland invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination when pressured to address these allegations. He flat out refused to answer 102 out of 105 questions, cleverly designed to display what he knew about these pesky conspiracies. But the Shade Court didn't stop there. After serving a 10-month jail sentence for pleading guilty for failing to report a felony, Copeland's lawyer, Brian White, was disbarred by the state Supreme Court. The justices stated that White admitted to discussing his trial strategy with Bodenheimer, all the while pulling strings so that the judge's daughters and friends could procure free drinks and appetizers at one of Copeland's restaurants. You might think I'm kidding, but no, this really happened. After this drama-filled custody case played out for 6 long years, a settlement was finally reached, out of court, 2 weeks before Hurricane Katrina struck the Gulf Coast on August 29th of 2005. Luann Hunter ended up getting 2 homes, along with full insurance for herself and Alex, and $20,000 in child support. Not too shabby, huh? A successful lawsuit from the Times-Picayune in 2006 managed to unseal court records, allowing the public's fascination with this local episode of lifestyles of the rich and famous to expand even further. Court records unveiled a lifestyle that was more Park Avenue than Popeyes, according to one local newspaper headline. The public devoured these tales of twice-yearly trips to the Bahamas, multiple yearly vacations to Las Vegas and Los Angeles, weekend excursions to New York solely for shopping, chartered limousines, a collection of housekeepers, nurses, secretaries, security guards, a barber, and even a mechanic to repair broken toys. However, the juiciest tidbit to arise from Luann Hunter versus Al Copeland was an estimate of Copeland's net worth that totaled $319 million in 2004. A closer look at the figures revealed that Copeland held $242 million in stock, $12.5 million in cash, $14.7 million in real estate, $4.5 million in boats, automobiles, and other toys. When you look at these numbers, you can't help but think to yourself, man, we are the 99%. According to a New York Times report, Copeland was infamous for keeping several lawyers busily in rotation for a handful of lawsuits at a time. And not surprisingly, Copeland was also armed with a renowned public relations firm led by Kit Lowell in order to set a spin cycle in motion to cleverly manipulate public opinion. This same PR firm managed Copeland's media relations with important businessmen, including Donald Trump, from 1977 until his death. Copeland's publicist, Kit Lowell, would later remark, "Al viewed challenges as a checkered starting flag. A masterful negotiator, his innate intelligence made him a fearsome opponent in a courtroom or a boardroom. Scary, even. There were few attorneys who could outthink or outnumber him. Actually, none I can remember." Copeland yet again tied the knot with a woman named Jennifer Duvall in 2000 at St. Louis Cathedral. He even went so far as to challenge local ideology by appealing to the Catholic Church's rejection of divorce. Maybe Copeland is actually related to Madame Cleo, because it's almost as if he knew, going into his 4th marriage, that it wouldn't last. After his wife Jennifer confessed to being involved in an extramarital affair, Copeland called it quits and officially divorced her only a year after they were wed. Before Copeland received national attention for his sensational episodes of ongoing legal actions and custody battles, he made headlines on a local scale in New Orleans over a series of disputes concerning his tacky Christmas light displays. Copeland played up the rags to riches justification on his excessive holiday lights, remarking that his parents could never afford any sort of holiday decorations or Christmas lights when he was growing up in the St. Thomas housing projects of New Orleans. To save money, his parents would instead take driving trips to slowly take in the Santani family's lights display on Canal Street that showcased a life-sized elephant and a toy factory. Copeland's personal light display began as a hobby in the 1970s when he decorated his lakefront manor with millions of lights, including 14-foot stars above his house, massive toy soldiers, and snowmen, and even a 26-foot tall Rudolph and Santa's sleigh set. His lights attracted thousands of sightseers on a nightly basis, making the bumper-to-bumper traffic in his neighborhood along Folst Drive and Metairie a nightmare to navigate. It wasn't long before one of his neighbors, an attorney named Burton Klein, filed suit. Other disgruntled neighbors got involved in the case, including Dr. Catherine Knight from Charity Hospital. Dr. Knight resided 3 blocks away from Copeland, and nonetheless testified that those pesky lights endangered the health of her patients by hindering her punctuality when she was called into the hospital. She also griped that the incessant stream of traffic killed her son's pet cat. To sum it all up, she asserted, "This display has caused neither peace nor goodwill in our neighborhood." That's an actual quote. Although District Judge Alvin Eason ruled that the crowds were merely an inconvenience, he nonetheless ordered Copeland to tone it down by removing 3 angels from his light display or serve time in jail. However, these contraband angel lights resurfaced on other neighbors' lawns in a sneaky turn of events soon thereafter. Tricky. Even more amusing was the fact that the OG prosecutor, Burton Klein, was the target of a stream of hate mail going as far as accusing him of being an antichrist for his previous ruling. After feeling the wrath of the citizens' pitchforks, Klein pulled Copeland right back into court to settle the Christmas score. Klein claimed Copeland had violated the court order, begging the court and local utility providers to hit the off switch on Copeland's lights once and for all. The lights finally went down in the city after the court ordered Copeland to pull the plug on his 250,000 Christmas lights on Christmas Eve, 1985. Additionally, the state high court ordered his arrest for contempt, forcing Copeland to stash the display at the Popeyes headquarters in Metairie with his tail between his legs. But his pride would eventually resurface in 1997 when he would unleash the lights upon the public once again. After Hurricane Katrina wiped out his lights that were on display in Lafayette Park in 2004, the lights were put into storage once again until 2007. Following Copeland's 2008 demise, his family announced that the display would take up a permanent residence at Lafayette Park, where they allowed Copeland's holiday cheer to shine on for years to come. The infamy surrounding Al Copeland wasn't just limited to custody battles and Christmas lights. Rumors circulated around the New Orleans region claiming that the Chicken King forked over generous campaign donations to the notorious David Duke, a former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard. While this wasn't proven to be true, it nonetheless damaged Copeland's reputation, forever branding him with the scarlet letter R for racist. During this whole debacle, a young African American recounted a story about Church's Chicken, a chain which Copeland purchased, involving a sketchy ingredient that was supposedly injected into the chicken that was used to sterilize black males under the orders of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Despite his attempts to reward anyone with $25,000 who could come forward with the information about the source of the rumor, the gossip continued to flood the public arena. The negative publicity kept plaguing the Popeyes brand, especially following a series of hits including the Shreveport woman who sued after allegedly chipping a tooth on a pebble found inside her side dish of Popeyes red beans and rice. In Alford vs. Copeland, the customer ended up settling for the cost to fix her broken tooth in the amount of $89. Copeland himself created the recipe for those red beans, along with the dirty rice and hand-rolled biscuits in his home kitchen in Chalmette, where he also managed to make his signature cayenne pepper-infused chicken flour batter that turned golden when fried. His first fried chicken business operated under the name Chicken on the Run, under the slogan, "So fast, you can get your chicken before your change." When that business failed to turn a profit, he switched up his recipes a tad and tried again under the name Popeyes, inspired by Jimmy Popeye Doyle's character in the movie The French Connection. Copeland wittily remarked at the time that there was no apostrophe in the name because he couldn't afford one. But soon that would all change, because eventually he would commission a catchy jingle sung by none other than Dr. John, stating, "Love that chicken from Popeyes." Lamar Berry was the VP of Marketing and Advertising during the 70s and 80s, asserting that his boss, Al Copeland was a business genius with a fierce competitiveness for business that could all be attributed to Copeland's less than fortunate upbringing in the St. Thomas housing projects. After franchising the successful chicken chain in 1977, it continued to steadily grow over the next decade to over 750 franchised restaurants. Not long thereafter, concerns started hitting the media centered around the harmful levels of fat and cholesterol in fried chicken, ultimately sending his company on a downward spiral. More negative gossip entered the scene after 9 owners of Popeyes franchises in Detroit filed a 1997 lawsuit. In Clark versus AFC, the franchises asserted that the merger between Popeyes and Church's Chicken was devised to corner the national fried chicken market among so-called low-end urban consumers. Court documents showed Copeland integrating a quote-unquote strategic realignment plan to increase profit for both chains. Now, rather than highlighting value under Church's "big pieces, little price" slogan, Popeyes would focus on product quality with the phrase, "love that chicken." The lawsuit argued that Church's strategic realignment plan was blatantly targeting the low end of the market by calling out attention to value, which is inherently a selling point for minority customers. Despite the Detroit franchise's claims of breach of contract, the court ruled against them. High on his latest court victory, Copeland ended up establishing a string of Cajun-themed restaurants, one of which was known as Straya California Creole Grand Cafe. This very restaurant would soon become the target of a local celebrity's rage and the source of amusement for a wide array of onlookers. Renowned vampire novelist Anne Rice had a house on St. Charles Avenue, right up the street from Copley's gaudy peach-colored Straya Cafe, with its gold panthers, metallic palm trees, and star-shaped bar. Straya wasn't exactly on the same level of sophistication as Galatoire's or Commander's Palace. So Rice did what any enraged writer would do: take out a full-page ad in the local newspaper sympathizing with tourists regarding the abomination of a gaudy restaurant that was clearly less dignified than a quote-unquote flophouse. Copeland wouldn't let Anne Rice suck his reputation dry like the heartless vampires she was so famous for creating. He certainly didn't take kindly to being pushed around, nor was he concerned about having Rice make a voodoo doll in his likeness, so he rebounded by suing her for defamation and libel. Who would get the last laugh? In Copeland versus Rice, he argued that Rice's ad had subjected him to contempt, hatred, ridicule, and humiliation. Adding more fuel to the fire, Copeland took out an ad of his very own in the same newspaper where he had asserted that Straya was positive overall for New Orleans due to creating over 200 jobs and replacing a dilapidated, abandoned car dealership in the same spot. To get in one last dig, Copeland joked that he was adding extra garlic to his recipes as an added defense against any possible vampires. Well, it takes 2 to tango, and Rice wouldn't back down so easily. She responded by taking out yet another ad, but this time it was told from the perspective of none other than Lestat the vampire. Lestat was here to let the public know that Straya was such an utter eyesore that it had stirred him awake from his epic slumber and thus propelled him to start biting necks for energy once again. The squabbles between Copeland and Rice went back and forth, well into the Mardi Gras festivities, when Rice supposedly hurled gold-colored, like much of the Straya interior decorations, gold-colored rubber rafts out of her limo during a parade, and then Copeland, in turn, rode on a Mardi Gras float with a stake and a necklace of garlic as his suit of armor. As weeks passed, the public opinion shifted out of Anne Rice's favor, and a poll by the Times-Picayune proved that readers sided with Copeland 3-1. All of that buzz ended up helping business for Straya, because during the height of litigations, the place was so overbooked that guests could expect a 2 to 3 hour wait just to be seated. Now, New Orleans television anchor and longtime friend of Copeland, Eric Paulson, once remarked, "Al did everything in life big." This think big attitude of Copeland's would extend over to his funeral, where he wanted to go out big, according to Paulson. His funeral, in St. Charles Avenue Holy Name of Jesus Catholic Church, was an appropriate reflection of his over-the-top lifestyle. With over 1,000 people in attendance, including his ex-wives perfectly perched amongst his 9 children, his fan base was properly represented. His larger-than-life funeral service featured a horse-drawn hearse that carried Al's body with oval windows, so everyone could admire the glistening bronze casket. A jazz band serenaded the audience with Frank Sinatra's My Way, as Grand Marshal Jennifer Jones took long, slow steps over the path leading to the mausoleum that was adorned with white rose petals. And in proper Copeland fashion, tiny beads resembling Christmas lights had been threaded through some of the white flowers. All in all, it was quite the spectacle to behold. As the doors to the mausoleum opened, Al's friends and relatives waved black and white checkered finish line flags. After the service ended, 11 white doves were released, seeing as how 11 was the Chicken King's favorite number. To cap it all off, 111 gold and white balloons filled the sky as the jazz band played Copeland's cheeky "Love That Chicken from Popeyes" anthem. Not only did Al go out big, but he also went out in style, and a gaudy style at that. So, after the Chicken King had left the building in a larger-than-life Elvis fashion, his legacy still reigned supreme. When asked to comment on his father's fame, Al Copeland Jr. remarked that his dear old dad had, quote, started with nothing, he made his money along the way, and he never forgot to show his appreciation for the people who worked the hardest, washing dishes, whatever. As always, none of the information contained in this broadcast is intended as legal advice.